Okay, so we're going to change a couple of strings on this electric guitar now. A lot of the principles of changing the strings are the same on the electric guitar as they are on the acoustic guitar or the classical guitar. Okay, basically I'm swapping these two strings. So let's see how we go about that. Obviously, release the tension first. As we've discussed before, you don't want to just cut the strings, you want to make sure that you take all the string tension off before removing the strings. You can cut them at this stage when they're loose if you want to, but at the end of the day, it's up to you. I just unwind them and take them off. Okay. Right, let's have a look at where this is going. Now the string on this particular electric guitar actually goes right through the body. So we need to push that and we'll see. Okay. Now here's something you shouldn't do. This cover has got 6 holes in it. The 6 holes are for passing the strings through. Unfortunately, this is upside down, so we can't pass the strings through this way. This cover now needs to be taken off, which you don't always need to do when you change the strings. Sometimes, if you do it right, you don't need to take the cover off at all. You can just pass the strings through. Unfortunately, in this case, we've got to take them off. I'm going to do that now, and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so we're going to remove this back plate now. This is the exciting bit. Okay, just removing the plate. This is quite common on a lot of guitars, particularly Fender style guitars. This is the tremolo spring. It provides the tension that returns the tremolo arm back to pitch. Okay? As far as string changing goes, we don't have to worry about that. Just leave it as it is. Setting these up is a more complicated thing, so we'll leave that alone for now. Okay, now I've pushed the string through a little. You can see it's coming out of the other side now. So we can just pull that out. There we go, that's one string out. I'm going to do the same with the second string here. So I'm just unwinding that second string. On this guitar, you'll see we've got string guides. If your guitar has them, you need to make sure that the strings go through the guides. Okay? If they don't, it's quite easy for the string to pop out of this slot here. Okay? And also, it doesn't get the proper tension going down that way as it should do. Okay, so that's just something. Not all guitars have string guides. It depends on a lot of things. If you haven't got them, you don't need to use them, of course. Guitars are designed in a particular way depending on how they're built. And on this guitar, you need string guides. Okay. So now we return to the bridge part. Push the string through a little bit again. You should be seeing it popping out the other side. There we go. That's out. Now replacing a string is simply a matter of pushing it back through that hole. This particular string has already been put on. This is going to be slightly difficult to get through the hole, but hopefully we'll manage it. Okay, I'll try and straighten it out a little bit so that we can push it into that hole. I did mention before about the back plate. Let's see, the back plate should be like that. In theory, you shouldn't need to take this off because you should be able to line up the holes and put the string through. Because this string is bent, it's not a new string, I'm not going to be able to do that here. Okay, actually the bent end is now broken off, so we're still having some trouble getting the string to line up with the hole. Okay, it's through. Right. And it should be passing through as it is there. Okay, we've now got the string in the right correct place. Okay. Yes, here's a problem that occurs when you're replacing old strings. Let's have a look at this. Zoom in and get focused. That's as zoomed as it gets. What you may notice here is that this string is now only just the same length as where the tuning peg comes to. That is going to be impossible to put on now, so I'm going to have to replace that with a different string. So the reason why the string was too short is because it's already been on the guitar and it's been cut to the length once it's been tightened up. So the string's been cut short. That means it's unfortunately not long enough to put back on to the same guitar. But that's okay because I've got spares. So I'm replacing the back plate before I put the string on, just to show you why we usually don't need to replace the back plate in order to replace the strings. Sometimes it's awkward and you have to take it off, but obviously if we don't need to take it off, it saves us a lot of time. Okay, now I'm going for the hole for the second string. Here's another thing before we go on, is that this really should be removed. If you have a tremolo arm like that, it unscrews, take it off, and we can set the guitar flat now. Okay. Right. So as you can see, or you may see if I get my hand out of the way, it is possible to get through there. And I don't know if you could actually see the holes inside now, but you have already seen them. So now let's see if we can actually make that push through. That would be good. There we go. Well, there we are, we're through to the other side. Right. Now we should be able to put the string in through the hole there. Obviously, this is the basic type of tuning peg where you've got a hole in the side of the shaft and the string goes through that. Now, as I mentioned before, we want to make sure that we go through the string guide. If there is one, there isn't always a string guide on every guitar, but if you can see them there, that's where they go. Okay. Now we start tuning up. Now if you want to, you can kind of put a loop in this. On electric guitars, it's usually not that necessary. Okay, it shouldn't be necessary. I don't do it as a matter of course, but if you want to make sure that it doesn't slip, it's one way of trying it. Okay, we can hear the guitar tuning up now. And you can hear it slipping as well. That's quite common. Now what we want to do is we want to pull that string. There you go, it's slipped a lot then. It's gone loose again. It may be that it wasn't sitting properly in the saddle down at this end. So, as we've seen, inside there at the back of this, there is a little hole that it goes through, and it will sit at the back of that hole and tension against that. Sometimes it's not quite up against the hole when you put it through. Okay, so we have to make sure that's there. Alright, so returning to this end, refocusing on that. Okay, so I'm pulling that string nice and tight. Hopefully you can see. Okay, we've got a very loose mounting there. In that case, let's see what I'm doing with my hand over here. Right, what I'm doing is pulling that string very tight. Okay. And I'm continuing to turn the tuning peg and tighten it up. This is another reason for pulling these strings tight, is to make sure that everything's seating properly before you start tuning properly. Otherwise it's going to go out of tune a lot. Okay, I'm keeping tension on as I'm turning the tuning peg. Now obviously you can't see the tuning peg from there. Let's get a wide shot of that. Okay, I'll zoom out. So with one hand I'm keeping pressure on here, and with the other hand I'm turning the tuner. Okay, now I'm pulling the tension on this as I'm tuning. Right, I've over-tuned that, but that's okay because that'll give it some extra stretch. Right, that's about in tune, roughly. Right, I'm tuning this, pulling this again. Dropped a little bit in tuning. This is the way to make sure your strings don't go out of tune as soon as you start playing. Give it a good tug. And when I say a good tug, you do have to be careful. These are breakable. It's quite possible to break your strings doing this. Occasionally even I do that, so beware. If you break them, you have to buy a new one. Okay, and that's the process for this particular electric guitar. If we just go back to the bridge, zoom in on that. Okay, we've seen that the string on this particular guitar goes through the back of the guitar, over the bridge, and over to the tuning pegs at the other end. Okay, not all electric guitars are like that. For instance, here's one of my guitars. Now in this one, the strings go through the back there. I'm actually going to show you this closer up. So if we look from the back there, we will see that the strings have actually gone in through these holes here. Okay, so these are surface mounted. But otherwise, the tuning method is quite the same. Let's have a look at the other end. Right. Now here you'll notice there aren't any string guides. Okay, the strings go straight to the tuning peg here. Now the difference is, if we get down here, we'll see that there's quite an angle going down that way. We don't need tuning guides because the angle of this neck bend here is quite enough to provide the pressure needed to keep those strings in place, the correct tension. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why you might not need any string guides on your guitar. Okay, so as I said before, if you don't have string guides, you don't need them. If you've got them, please use them because they're obviously designed to keep your strings in place. Okay, I think that's about it for now. All the strings will be the same process. One thing to note, particularly if you've got a guitar that has got 3 on a side, is we always put the strings from the inside. Always put the strings from the inside, never the outside. Okay? It will work if you do it from the outside, but 2 things will happen. 1, there will be more tension on the string, and 2, you'll be tuning the wrong way round. Okay, just a thing to watch out for. Okay, that's it.